Darkness. Techno is inextricably associated with this word, but what does it actually mean to say that something, someone, or a style of music is dark? What existential conditions does the word actually point towards? From a superficial perspective, darkness is opposed to light and defines a world of sadness, negativity, evil, and immorality. But this equation of darkness with these terms misses the true ontological meaning of the word. What is considered dark is any entity that has been turned away from safety, order, and predictability and opened upon a world of raw, chaotic forces. This is why things considered dark tend to scare people, not because they are negative or bad, but because they confront people with a disordered image of reality that is confusing, disorienting, challenging, or disturbing. French philosopher Gilles Deleuze called this process of moving from a sense of safety and patterned stability to a more anarchic, free-flowing existential state deterritorialization. This term means to leave home, abandon safety, and explode our being so that we are open to an entire world of abstract, impersonal, and foundational forces. With this understanding, we can say that techno is not dark because it in any way carries within it a negative or evil force, like some kind of witchcraft or sorcery, but because it pulls apart, unravels, and destroys musical safety. Saying it is spooky, nasty, crazy, or so forth are just decorative metaphors for what it actually is, namely, a vehicle for movement away from comfort and into the abstract. Unusual sounds, familiar sounds being used in unusual ways, sounds that scratch the cerebral cortex, that melt the face, percussion or synth patterns that disorient rather than anchor the listener. These are the hallmarks of techno, and they are the same elements that define its darkness. In this sense, darkness is a fundamental component of the genre and is utterly essential to its ongoing existence. Without this destabilizing methodology, techno ceases to exist. With more order comes more safety, and more safety closes our window onto energetic vastness. Techno is never a return home or a secure harbor, but is always a departure, a line of flight, an escape. Techno breaks music the same way that abstract art breaks realism, the way that poetry breaks language, the way that brutalism breaks architecture. In all these cases, dominant forms are broken down to lines of movement, speeds, and flows. The key is not to dissolve entirely, for that would mean annihilation, but rather to unravel. In today's episode, we are very fortunate to host the immensely talented producer and DJ Denise Rabe. Having entered the techno scene in the early 2010s via a circuitous route through hip-hop, jungle, and house, Rabe quickly established herself as one of the most powerful forces in the Berlin techno scene, having been a staple of the Berghain roster since 2016, and also regularly dispensing her unique brand of immersive techno, not only across other venues in the city, but also in Europe, the US, and Asia as well. Not content with destroying club dance floors as a DJ, Denise also quickly embraced the world of production, releasing her first EP on Mauritius-based label Mute Wax in December 2015. From that first release, a unique sonic identity was immediately established, which has carried through all of her subsequent work. EPs on respected techno outlets such as Arts and Stroboscopic Artifacts followed, until she took the most important step of creating her own record label, Rabe, in December 2017. Functioning mainly as a vehicle for her own productions, the label has released a total of 10 EPs, including important collaborative projects with audio sculptors Lidval and Ricardo Garduno. Rabe's sound is deeply and beautifully dark. Her productions tend not to follow established protocols of layering to generate energy, but rather the drive and momentum of her music emanates primarily from the intensity of each track's atmosphere. Her sound exhibits a sonic balance within which no element clearly dominates. Unlike many of her peers, whose sound is recognizable by their kicks, their percussion, their modular synths, or their rumble, Rabe's sound is defined by the emotional and psychic atmosphere given off by the total combination of sound. The tracks are an assemblage, a gathering together of many different abstract elements around a unifying force, which gives her overall body of work its consistency and singularity. As Denise shares with us now in the interview, this focused swirl of forces in her music aligns closely with her own philosophical attitudes and inclinations. First off though, she explains how she got pulled into the vortex of the Berlin techno underworld.
Well, when I was 16, I was into hip-hop music. Started actually with that and learned like scratching, beat juggling and stuff. I would not say I'm very good at that.
Yeah, it's not easy.
But yeah, I started DJing with hip-hop rap music. Then I started studying and then I didn't have time, but then I got more into like house, deep house, tech house, because it was that time. And when I moved to Berlin in 2011, I started buying records again. But then I was in my house phase. And then I went into the dub techno stuff. And then I had like a fantastic dance to Chris Liebing and Luke Slater in Berghain. And that's where I was like, no, I need to do techno.
Yeah, I mean, I read also that like your music and your approach to making music, it also includes elements of like Gothic culture. Is that correct?
I'm not a goth girl. I'm a lot into mysticism. I think that would catch it better. The natural thing I carry inside of me.
Great. And I mean, when you say that you're into like mysticism, what are you referring to?
I went into alchemy, spiritual, esoteric stuff, Buddhism, all kind of like things where you try to understand why we're here, why being human, or what's the answer, what is after this whole thing here.
And also maybe like understanding the forces or maybe spiritual forces that are circulating in the world.
Yeah. Why do you think of someone and recently this person is calling you? Or like, if you haven't talked to that person in a while, it's like, oh, and then you let it go. And then a few days or hours later, sometimes, and then this person finally calls you. This is just the most simple example, I think.
And how does that like interest in mysticism and spirituality, how does that connect to your music?
Being authentic in your music, I think that translates your inner to the music. So I think this interest in these things translate automatically in what you do, because music is also such a spiritual thing, in my opinion, because you can't see it, but you can feel it, but you cannot touch it. I think everything what comes out in a creative way is you, if you don't think about what you do. That's the best way to make music, not thinking about an end product or result, just going with the flow and seeing what happens. I think it's very interesting to be surprised by yourself. Of course, when you are making a track, then you think like, oh, okay, now I would like to have another sound which is more in the high frequency space or so. Then you look for something like this. But in the beginning, I just start and see where the rest is leading me to. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting because when I Like when I was when I was listening to your music, and then I was like looking at your Bandcamp for your record label, I thought maybe there was like a deliberate like philosophy of, you know, the occult or mysticism behind it, like you had like a certain kind of idea of the world that you want to create with the music, and then you kind of follow that.
Yeah, well, my last name is Raven.
Okay.
Rabe means raven. So, and this is a natural thing which I just used.
Oh, right.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know. Yeah.
Do you have a special interest in the symbolic meanings of like the raven?
It's very interesting to see the raven is used in so many different areas. Well, there's Odin and the ravens, then death is like when you see a raven, this can like close, like a special occasion with a raven. That means like death is approaching if you believe in that stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the raven is like a very interesting and super smart bird also. Like we can see that all over the internet, like ravens, like the videos, like what they can do. It's incredible.
Wow.
They just use a stick to get something out of a glass to get the food, or you show them something and they understand. So yeah, the raven. Of course, when I started looking into the name of my label, this was not clear from the beginning that I would use my name, but everyone said like, you should use your last name. And of course, it made it easier also to produce images or find images to, and it fits my music too, I think.
Yeah, that's quite incredible actually. There's such a natural synergy.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. And
I didn't choose it, it's just
it chose you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I noticed on all of your releases, like all the EPs and on your label, that they all have different combinations of animals as well, the titles.
Yeah, it's the fables from Aesop. Yeah, it's the fables.
Okay.
Also, I really like what's behind the fables because it's stories between animals, but in the end, they use the animals to show what is going on between humans, actually. So, yeah, it's always something to learn from the stories. What you also can see in your own life happening, like someone gets used and tricked into something, like the fox and the raven. The fox wants to trick the raven because the raven has a piece of cheese in his beak, and he wants to make the raven sing, so the cheese will drop. So yeah, they trick each other, and it's I think it's.
And like in terms of your your approach to making music, like as a producer, what's your like main objective as a producer? Are you just a simple like producer in the sense that you're just making tracks that you think are going to work best on the dance floor, or are you really trying to create art that goes beyond the dance floor and that can just be consumed like regardless of context?
I think I do both. I try to keep a balance because of course I want that my tracks are also played by other producers, but I also do, or especially in the past, I think I did much more artsy stuff, and then I decided I want to have it work a little bit more on the dance floor, so I try to combine the sounds and the driving spirit in a track to play it. In the album, I did an album and it's coming out in October. This is much more artsy. It's not a dance floor album. Yeah, there is not a track on it where I would say like, oh, it's a hit. Not at all. Right. It's more like they all work together. I think you have to listen to the complete thing. It's a journey, basically, from start to beginning. A very dark journey, but a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, your music, I mean, like it's so dark. I mean, I mean that like as the biggest compliment because
Okay.
the main quality that I look for in techno is how dark it is.
Okay.
Like usually, like the darker the music, the better it is.
Well, it brings a lot out of your own shadows and emotions, which, can be a good thing if you want to have this emotions. Yeah, I have problems producing happy music.
Sure.
It doesn't feel like it's me, even if I'm not a depressed or dark person, not at all, actually. But in my music, I express my shadows, probably, or the melancholic side.
A lot of people, they think that dark music means that it's negative.
Yeah,
and
it's not.
It's not. Dark music can just be like radical and totally free. Like some of the
you can
music.
get also super lost in it if you let yourself merge with the darkness and not fight it. I understand that a lot of people don't get it. They want like uplifting stuff. I like uplifting stuff, but it's not my way of making music.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think like the uplifting music is kind of safe.
Exactly, it's easy.
Exactly, like
easy for me is in a production way boring. I bore myself if it's too easy. Maybe it's a belief sentence from what I have no idea comes from. It must be complicated.
Right, yeah.
But it's not complicated. For me, it's actually easier to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I like to tell stories with my tracks. Also with my DJ sets, I would say. It's easy to play the same music like kind of for hours. But for me, it's like, I like to have a little bit ups and downs, like a journey. Basically.
Obviously, like you're an incredible DJ, incredible producer. In terms of like the gender aspect of the music scene and the techno scene, do you see that as still being like a very important factor? And do you think there are still barriers and discrimination that takes place against women in the techno scene, or do you think it's quite a inclusive, tolerant space now?
The thing is, I never had the feeling I had it more difficult than others, but I also think it's a way how I grew up. I was never raised to believe that being a girl meant I couldn't do something. My parents never told me like, oh no, don't do it. Like they let me flourish. Like I could try everything. So I think I was also always into boys stuff. I played football and I was always hanging around with guys. I had more male friends always than girls around me. So that's why the thought never came up, never felt like I was not or was excluded ever.
Right. Yeah.
Because I just do, and I never had like people or guys in the scene saying something shitty or stupid to me, which would make me feel bad or not wanting to do it anymore. No, absolutely not.
Are there other like female figures within the techno scene who were like an inspiration for you, or who are an inspiration currently, or?
Well, I was always intrigued by Dasha. She's also very variable. Like she's doing like from ambient over techno. Like she's doing really great stuff and very authentic. And Adriana Lopez, very powerful, nice human being. Yeah, these two were actually the main for me.
And what about people like Paula Temple?
So yeah, Paula was also, I forgot her. Yeah, Paula was also very important for me too. Yeah.
You've been DJing at Berghain for like almost 10 years now, I think. Is that correct?
My first gig was in 2016, yeah.
And is that, like, for you, is it the best club you've played at and the kind of holy grail?
Yeah, it is still, definitely. Yeah.
Cool. And how often are you DJing? Are you DJing pretty much every weekend or?
No, no. It depends. Every month is different. Sometimes I have just one. Sometimes I have three. When I go touring outside of Berlin, like South America, then I have more. But it's always different. It's not very constant.
Do you have any, like, currently, do you have any like favorite record labels or like artists that you think are doing like the best, most interesting kind of work, or anything that's like really interesting for you?
Edit Select is pretty good. KR3 is a label I discovered not so long ago. Yeah, Libbal is pretty good. He's driving, quite interesting with the sounds.
I saw that you had a collaboration with him as well.
Yeah. I had a collaboration with him. I mean, there are so many.
You've obviously like achieved so much already, and you know, playing regularly at Berghain is obviously a massive achievement that all techno DJs can only dream about. Having achieved so much already, I mean, are there other things that you're still wanting to achieve in your career, or?
I think as a creative person working in that field, there's always something to learn. It's never ending. The artist is always a student, in my opinion. So the skills, like, I'm not perfect. There's so much more to learn. You can get so much better in production. And I think over the years, like, I definitely got better with sounds and how this track should be like more organized or less muddy and stuff. In the beginning, I did not know what I know now, and there's still so much more I find out. Yeah,
interesting. So like for you, it's more of like mastering the, like, being able to express yourself through the music.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a journey without destination.
I want to give my biggest thanks to Denise Rabe for agreeing to participate in this third episode of Dystopia, and hope you all enjoyed learning about her musical philosophy. Now we are ready for the main course, and that is a 30-minute selection of her music, curated and mixed by yours truly. Be sure to immerse yourself in the mystical atmosphere of her sound, and stay posted for more episodes coming up with other innovative figures in today's techno scene.